The examination room fell silent as Dr. Emily Green stared at the scan results, her expression growing grave. "Mr. Thompson," she said slowly, "if this hadn't been caught when it was, we would have been looking at a very different conversation 6 months from now." But what happened next shocked everyone who knew the powerful business mogul, because the person who saved his life wasn't a doctor, wasn't family, and certainly wasn't someone he'd ever expected to owe his life to. 3 weeks earlier, Sophia Carter pushed her cleaning cart through the marble hallways of the Thompson estate, her worn sneakers silent against the polished floors. At 44, she had been Richard Thompson's head housekeeper for 7 years, moving through his world of crystal chandeliers and imported artwork like a ghost. The mansion sprawled across 15 acres in the Hamptons, its windows overlooking manicured gardens that cost more to maintain each month than most people made in a year. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," Richard called from his mahogany desk as she entered his office. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across walls lined with awards and photos of him shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. "Morning, Mr. Thompson," Sophia replied, beginning her careful routine around his workspace. She had learned long ago to move efficiently but invisibly around him during his morning calls. As she dusted the bookshelf behind his desk, a newspaper clipping fluttered to the floor. Sophia bent to retrieve it, catching sight of the headline, "Thompson Foundation donates $2 million to Children's Hospital." The photo showed Richard presenting an oversized check, his smile warm and genuine, so different from the stern businessman she cleaned up after each day. "Quite a difference from the man the tabloids paint me as, isn't it?" Richard's voice startled her. She hadn't realized he'd finished his call. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. I didn't mean to pry." "No need to apologize. That donation was for kids with cancer." His voice softened. "Most people only see the corporate shark. Sometimes I wonder if that's all there really is anymore." Little did Sophia know that this moment of vulnerability was the first crack in the armor that had protected Richard Thompson's heart for decades. Over the following days, Sophia began noticing things others missed. Richard's usual commanding presence seemed strained. During board meetings that echoed from his office, she heard his voice growing hoarse. Most telling was the way he kept absently rubbing the left side of his neck, his fingers working at something that seemed to bother him constantly. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning while Sophia was organizing Richard's library. He sat in his leather reading chair, phone pressed to his ear, negotiating what sounded like a hostile takeover. But Sophia watched him wince every time he tilted his head, his hand constantly moving to massage his neck. "The Jakarta deal needs to close by Friday," he was saying, but his voice cracked slightly. "I don't care what their lawyers say about," he paused, grimacing as he adjusted his position. When he hung up, Sophia found herself stepping forward despite every instinct telling her to remain invisible. "Mr. Thompson? Are you feeling all right? You seem uncomfortable." He looked up, surprised by her directness. "Just a stiff neck. Too many long days at the desk." But something in his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty, told Sophia there was more. This decision would change everything, though neither of them knew it yet. The next morning, as Richard prepared for another crucial meeting, his silk tie sat crooked despite multiple attempts to straighten it. Sophia watched him struggle in the hallway mirror, his frustration mounting. "Would you like me to help with that?" she offered quietly. Richard hesitated, then nodded. As Sophia moved closer to adjust his collar, her fingers brushed against his neck. What she felt made her blood run cold, a hard, irregular lump about the size of a quarter, hidden just beneath his jawline. Their eyes met in the mirror, and Sophia saw something she'd never seen in 7 years of working for Richard Thompson: fear. "Mr. Thompson," she whispered, her hand still gentle against his neck, "how long have you known about this?" The powerful man who commanded boardrooms and dominated headlines suddenly looked smaller, more human. I thought it was just stress. Tension from work." Sophia's mind flashed to her own father, 15 years ago, rubbing his neck in exactly the same way. By the time they'd convinced him to see a doctor, it had been too late. The memory sent a chill through her entire body. But the real shock was still coming, because what Sophia discovered next would force her to make a choice that could cost her everything, including the job her family desperately needed to survive. Sophia's hands trembled as she stared at the ceiling of her small bedroom that night, Richard's dismissive words echoing in her mind. She had felt something, she was certain of it. The way his body had tensed when her fingers brushed against that spot, the slight wince that crossed his face before he caught himself. Unable to sleep, Sophia slipped out of bed at 5 a.m. and made her way to the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue. The massive stone lions seemed to watch over her as she climbed the steps, determination replacing her earlier uncertainty. She spent hours hunched over medical textbooks, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she researched lymph nodes, tumors, and warning signs. Enlarged lymph nodes in the neck, she whispered to herself, tracing the words with her finger. Can indicate serious underlying conditions if left untreated. Every page she turned made her heart race faster. The symptoms aligned too perfectly with what she had observed in Richard, the occasional fatigue she'd noticed, the way he sometimes paused mid-sentence during phone calls, rubbing that exact spot on his neck. By evening, Sophia returned to her modest apartment in Queens, her mind churning with everything she'd learned. The familiar scent of her daughter's favorite vanilla candles greeted her as she walked through the door. "Mom, you look exhausted," 17-year-old Lily Carter called from the kitchen table, where she was surrounded by college brochures and scholarship applications. Her daughter had inherited Sophia's warm brown eyes but carried herself with a confidence that made Sophia's heart swell with pride. "Just a long day, sweetheart," Sophia replied, setting down her purse and noticing the stack of unopened bills on the counter. The sight made her stomach clench, Lily's college dreams hanging in the balance with every envelope. Lily studied her mother's face with the perceptiveness that had always amazed Sophia. "Something's bothering you. What happened at work?" Sophia hesitated, then found herself pouring out the entire story. She described the lump, Richard's dismissal, her hours at the library researching symptoms that terrified her. "Mom," Lily said, reaching across to squeeze her mother's hand, "you have to tell him. What if it's serious? What if waiting makes it worse? But what if I'm wrong? What if he fires me for overstepping?" Sophia's voice cracked with the weight of their financial reality. "Your college applications are due next month, and the mortgage." "Stop," Lily interrupted firmly. "You taught me to do what's right, even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. If Mr. Thompson gets mad at you for trying to save his life, then he's not the man you've always said he was." The next evening, Sophia's opportunity came during dinner service. Richard sat alone at the massive mahogany dining table, city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. The crystal chandelier cast warm shadows across his face as he reviewed documents between bites of the salmon she'd prepared. But tonight, Sophia couldn't focus on her usual seamless service. Her hands shook slightly as she set down his water glass, the sound louder than usual in the quiet room. This was it, her moment to speak up or forever wonder what might have happened. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, surprised by the interruption. "Yes, Sophia?" She took a deep breath, channeling Lily's courage. "Yesterday, when I was helping with your collar, I felt something on your neck. A small lump." The words tumbled out faster now. "I've been researching, and I think you should have a doctor examine it." Richard's fork paused halfway to his mouth. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic far below. His jaw tightened, and Sophia braced herself for his anger. But instead of dismissal, something flickered behind his eyes, a vulnerability she'd never seen before. You researched it?" "Yes, sir. I spent the day at the library. There are warning signs that shouldn't be ignored, and..." "Why?" The question came out rougher than he intended. "Why does it matter to you?" Sophia's throat tightened. "Because I've seen what happens when people wait too long. My neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, she felt something similar last year. She was too scared to speak up, thought she was being dramatic. By the time she finally saw a doctor, The sentence hung unfinished between them, its implication clear. Richard set down his fork completely, his usual commanding presence replaced by something raw and uncertain. "I've been feeling more tired lately," he admitted quietly. "And there's been some discomfort." "Then please," Sophia pressed gently, "see a doctor. What's the worst that could happen if you check and it's nothing? But if it's something..." The mogul who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals sat in silence, grappling with the possibility that his housekeeper might have just saved his life. The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy blanket, and for the first time in years, Richard Thompson felt truly vulnerable. He looked up at Sophia, seeing not just his employee but someone who genuinely cared about his well-being. I'll make some calls tomorrow," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion he usually kept buried. But as Sophia nodded and quietly left him alone with his thoughts, neither of them could have imagined what Dr. Emily Green would discover during that appointment, or how dramatically their lives were about to change forever. The mahogany doors of the Manhattan Medical Center's elite wing seem to loom larger as Richard Thompson sits in the plush waiting room, his fingers unconsciously rubbing the spot on his neck where Sophia had found the lump just 3 days earlier. The magazine in his lap remains unopened as his mind races through possibilities he'd rather not consider. "Mr. Thompson?" Dr. Emily Green's voice cuts through his thoughts. She's exactly what Richard expected from New York's most sought-after oncologist, crisp white coat, silver hair pulled back perfectly, and the kind of composed demeanor that comes from delivering life-changing news to Manhattan's elite. In her corner office overlooking Central Park, Dr. Green gestures to the leather chair across from her desk. "I've reviewed your scans, and I need to be direct with you, Richard." She pulls up the images on her computer screen, pointing to a shadowy mass. "This is a malignant tumor, stage 2 thyroid cancer. The good news is we caught it relatively early, but without treatment, we'd be looking at a very different conversation in 6 months." Richard's composure cracks for just a moment. How early are we talking?" "Your housekeeper may have saved your life," Dr. Green says, leaning back in her chair. "If this had gone undetected for another year, maybe 2, we'd be dealing with metastasis. As it stands now, your prognosis is excellent with immediate intervention." But what Dr. Green doesn't mention yet is the critical detail that will change everything: just how close Richard came to missing his window entirely. Across town in her modest Queens apartment, Sophia stares at the stack of bills scattered across her kitchen table. The mortgage notice sits on top, stamped in red, "Final notice, 30 days to cure default." Her savings account statement shows a balance that makes her stomach clench: $247.83. "Mom?" Lily appears in the kitchen doorway, backpack slung over her shoulder. "You okay? You've been staring at those papers for like 10 minutes. Sophia quickly shuffles the bills together. "Just organizing some things, sweetheart." "How was school?" "Good, but..." Lily hesitates, then sits down across from her mother. "I got the final tuition notice for next semester. Mom, I can defer enrollment. I can work for a year, help with..." "Absolutely not." Sophia's voice carries the steel that got her through 18 years of single motherhood. "You're going to Columbia, and you're going in January as planned. I'll figure this out." But even as she says it, Sophia knows the math. 3 jobs, careful budgeting, and she's still drowning. The irony isn't lost on her that she spends her days in a mansion worth more than her entire neighborhood while counting pennies for groceries. Later that evening, Richard returns to his Fifth Avenue penthouse with Dr. Green's words echoing in his mind. He finds Sophia in the library, carefully dusting the same volumes where she first noticed his discomfort. "Sophia," he says quietly, causing her to turn. Something in his tone makes her set down the feather duster immediately. "Mr. Thompson? Is everything all right?" He studies her face, the genuine concern in her dark eyes, the way she's already ready to help before knowing what he needs. "You were right. About the lump." He pauses, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. "It's cancer." Sophia's hand flies to her chest. "Oh my. Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry." What did the doctor say? She said you saved my life. The admission comes out rougher than he intended. If you hadn't spoken up when you did. He trails off, unable to finish the sentence. For a moment, they stand in the vast library, two people from completely different worlds connected by a single moment of human decency. Then Sophia does something that surprises them both. She reaches out and briefly touches his arm. You're going to be okay, she says with quiet conviction. You caught it early, and you're strong. Richard nods, but there's something else weighing on his mind. Something Dr. Green told him about timing that he hasn't shared yet. Something that will make Sophia's intervention even more miraculous than either of them realizes. There's more, he begins, then stops as his phone buzzes with an urgent message. As he reads it, his face darkens considerably. The message is from someone he thought he'd left in his past, someone who's about to complicate everything in ways he never saw coming. Richard sits in his lawyer's mahogany-paneled office, staring out at the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The diagnosis weighs heavy on his mind as James Morrison, his attorney of 20 years, shuffles through estate documents. Richard, you need to face this head-on, James says, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. The melanoma is aggressive, but Dr. Green caught it early thanks to your maid. We should discuss your will, your foundation, the offshore accounts. Stop. Richard raises his hand, his voice barely above a whisper. I never thought I'd be having this conversation at 58. All these years building an empire, and it might mean nothing. Meanwhile, across town in the gleaming chrome offices of Pinnacle Industries, Richard's biggest competitor Marcus Webb leans back in his leather chair, a predatory smile creasing his face. He slides an envelope across his desk to his assistant. Get this to the Thompson Maid. 50,000 cash if she can provide us with insider information about Richard's condition and business dealings. If he's as sick as our sources suggest, this could be our chance to acquire his healthcare portfolio. That evening, Sophia finds the envelope slipped under her apartment door. Her hands tremble as she opens it, revealing crisp $100 bills and a typed note. Lily looks up from her college applications at the kitchen table. Mom, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Sophia sinks into the chair across from her daughter, the money scattered between them. Someone wants to pay me to betray Mr. Thompson's trust. $50,000, Lily. That's more than I make in 2 years. Lily's eyes widen. That would cover my entire college tuition and our mortgage payments. She pauses, studying her mother's conflicted expression. But you're not going to take it, are you? How can I? That man could be dying, and I'd be selling his secrets for profit. What kind of person would that make me? The next morning, Sophia returns to work with the envelope tucked in her purse, intending to tell Richard about the bribe attempt. But before she can speak, she notices him in his study, speaking intensely on the phone. I don't care about the past grievances, Margaret. I'm sick. Really sick. And I can't keep carrying this anger toward you and David anymore. Sophia realizes he's speaking to his estranged sister. She quietly begins dusting nearby, unable to help overhearing. The cancer could have killed me if my maid hadn't noticed the lump. A woman I barely acknowledged as a person saved my life, while my own family. Richard's voice breaks. Maybe we could meet for coffee? I'd like to see my nephews before it's too late. Later, while organizing Richard's desk, Sophia discovers an old leather journal tucked behind some files. The pages fall open to an entry dated 15 years ago. Margaret accused me of choosing money over family when I refused to co-sign David's business loan. She was right. I watched our father work himself to death building this company, and I became exactly like him, cold, calculating, alone. But I was so afraid of losing everything that I pushed away everyone who mattered. Now here's what's going to shock you even more. The journal reveals that Richard had actually tried to reconnect with his family multiple times over the years, but his pride and fear of rejection kept sabotaging every attempt. Sophia realizes that the tumor isn't just threatening his life, it's forcing him to confront the emotional walls he's built around himself. Richard appears in the doorway, catching Sophia with the journal in her hands. Instead of anger, his face shows relief. "You read it, didn't you?" he asks quietly. "Good. Maybe now you understand why your courage to speak up about that lump means more to me than just saving my life. You showed me what real caring looks like." Sophia sets the journal down gently. "Mr. Thompson, I need to tell you something important. Someone offered me money, a lot of money, to spy on you during your illness." Richard's jaw tightens, but his eyes remain focused on Sophia. "And?" But before Sophia can answer, Richard's phone buzzes with an urgent text from Dr. Green, and what she's about to reveal will change everything about how they approach his treatment and recovery. The operating room doors swing open, and Dr. Emily Green emerges with a weary but triumphant smile. Richard's surgery has taken 4 grueling hours, but the tumor that could have claimed his life within 2 years has been completely removed. Sophia paces the sterile hallway, her hands clasped tightly together, still wearing her work uniform because she came straight from the mansion when Richard called her his emergency contact. The surgery was a complete success, Dr. Green announces to Sophia and Richard's small circle of loved ones. "We caught it just in time. Had this gone undetected for even another 6 months, we would be looking at a very different outcome. Your quick thinking, Mrs. Carter, literally added 10 years to his life." When Richard awakens in recovery, his eyes search the room until they find Sophia sitting beside his bed, holding a small bouquet of flowers from her own garden. His voice is hoarse from the breathing tube, but his words are crystal clear. "You saved my life, Sophia. How do I even begin to thank someone who gave me back my future?" The transformation in Richard begins immediately. Within days of his recovery, he makes a phone call that shocks everyone who knows him. He reaches out to his estranged brother Michael, whom he hasn't spoken to in 15 years. Sophia, who discovered the painful family history in Richard's journal, had gently encouraged this reconciliation during one of their conversations in the hospital. The reunion takes place in Richard's library, the same room where Sophia first noticed his discomfort. Michael enters hesitantly, gray-haired and carrying the weight of years of silence between them. Richard's voice breaks as he speaks. "I almost died, Michael. And the only thing I could think about in that hospital bed was how stupid our fight was 20 years ago, how I let pride cost me my only brother." Sophia watches from the doorway as the two men embrace, tears streaming down both their faces. Later, she learns that their estrangement began over their father's business decisions, a disagreement that spiraled into decades of stubborn silence. Richard's brush with mortality has given him the perspective to see what truly matters. But Richard's gratitude extends far beyond emotional gestures. 3 weeks after his surgery, he calls Sophia into his office. On his desk lies a college acceptance letter addressed to Lily Carter, along with a check that makes Sophia's knees weak. "Full scholarship to Columbia University," Richard says with a grin. "And this covers all your mortgage payments for the next 5 years. You gave me back my life, Sophia. The least I can do is secure yours and Lily's future." Sophia's hands tremble as she holds the check. Years of working double shifts, of choosing between groceries and utilities, of lying awake worrying about Lily's dreams slipping away, all of it dissolves in this moment. "Mr. Thompson, I can't accept this. I only did what anyone would do." "That's exactly why you deserve it," Richard replies. "Because you did what was right without expecting anything in return. That's the rarest quality in the world, Sophia, and it saved my life." The story spreads through their tight-knit community like wildfire. Within months, Sophia becomes a local hero, invited to speak at community centers and churches about the power of courage and compassion. The woman who once cleaned houses in silence now stands before crowds, inspiring others to speak up when they see something wrong, to act with kindness even when it's frightening. At Lily's high school graduation, Richard sits in the audience beside Sophia, both of them beaming with pride as her daughter delivers the valedictorian speech. Lily speaks about her mother's bravery, about how one moment of courage can change everything, and about the responsibility we all have to care for one another. Richard's annual medical checkups continue to show clear results. The doctors confirm that early detection made all the difference. Without Sophia's intervention, the aggressive tumor would have been inoperable within 18 months. Her gentle touch in that library truly did add a decade to his life, just as the doctors promised. The mansion still gleams with its previous grandeur, but now it's filled with something it never had before: genuine warmth and connection. Richard hosts family dinners with Michael and his children, bridging relationships that seemed permanently broken. Sophia no longer works as just a maid. She's become the estate manager, overseeing Richard's new charitable foundation that provides healthcare screenings for domestic workers across New York. As we reflect on this incredible true story, remember that heroes aren't always the people making headlines or commanding boardrooms. Sometimes they're the quiet observers, the caring souls who notice what others miss, who find the courage to speak up when it matters most. Sophia Carter's gentle touch and brave heart didn't just save Richard Thompson's life, they transformed it completely, proving that compassion and courage can literally change the world, one person at a time. What would you have done in Sophia's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove ordinary people can do extraordinary things.